networks for 5G wireless communication. If the listeners for these sessions are very particular about the title of the FDP, then obviously I can tell you that I'm not going to talk any of the word that is given in this title. Whereas I can clearly tell you that at the end of this presentation, you can see that it has a huge scope of research where you can connect yourself to this title. So that is the basic introduction I would like to give, because you may not have a, or you should not have a feel that this presentation is something away from the title. And moreover, I would like to tell that this session may be something an odd man out in your 5-day program. If I have just gone through the program sessions, so it may look like something odd. So please, keeping all those things away, if you look into this, you can see how this can be related to the title of today's session. So that is the only request I would like to make to all the listeners. And coming to this, so my topic today I have planned in such a way that I will be talking about an underwater communication. What do you mean by underwater communication? What are the basic fundamental important things that we have to consider while we are doing communication in underwater? And then some of the sensors, few underwater sensors which has been used for underwater communication, and the principles of those sensors, how those sensors work in order to collect the data and for data processing, and various applications of the underwater. So this is how I have framed my presentation for the day. So before getting into the presentation, so next few slides, I would like to just brief out about my institute, followed by my lab. Since a detailed briefing of my profile is already given, I would like to prefer about the work what we do in our lab. So basically, this is the lab. Underwater Acoustic Research Lab is the lab that I have established by the year 2014-2015 after completing my PhD. So I did my PhD in this domain. Though I am from electronics and communication engineering, I had passionate towards doing research in a different line, and that I have taken around 8 to 9 years for look into the right domain where I can just look into do something. So then I came to know that underwater is one of the existing one. So slowly I ventured into that, start learning about what is underwater, and I was very particular about how I can relate the electronics and communication or to the maximum whatever is possible in this underwater domain, and that is what is my journey, and I'm still trying to continue fitting into this. So basically I work for SSN College of Engineering. So this college was founded by Dr. Shivnada, Chairman, HCL Technologies, and with the help of or with the guidance of our Dean Research, Dr. P. Ramasamy, now I'm able to establish this lab and various researches that we are carrying out. So at this point, I would like to thank our chairman as well as my Dean Research. And all these data is already available in the website, so I don't want to waste my time in all these things. So getting into my team, so it's a old picture which we have taken 2 years before. So basically, what all presentation that I am going to make are the outcomes that I have achieved, and the person who introduced me said that I have won all these awards or publications, all those things. With humble, I should want to make it very clear that all those things are not outcome of mine alone. It is a teamwork. 100% it is a teamwork, and I strongly believe that if we have a good team, then obviously we can achieve whatever we want. So at this point, I would like to thank my team also. So when I represent my team comprises of interdisciplinary. That is very, very important. So he is a professor from EEE department. She is a professor from mathematics department, and he is a professor from Georgia Tech, and she is from SRM University. She is a research scholar from SRM University, and she is a professor from ECE. And the students whom you see are mixed from mechanical, ECE, IT, EEE, all those sectors. Now, The reason why I would like to get into underwater, or before getting into this, I would like to know what what is the amount of information that you have about signal processing in underwater. Can any of the listeners or participants can tell me? You can make it little interactive rather than a one-way communication. Just I present the slides what I have prepared. Is there anyone who is working in this underwater domain? Madam, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So audible, sir.
Is there anyone working in underwater domain? Okay, Shamili, I think you have raised your hand. Is this for the answer? Okay, very good. So may I know the reason why you have taken underwater? In case if you have any reason? Okay, I don't know whether we get an answer for this. So basically, I will tell you the reason why we have to look into underwater is very simple. You see here, 70% of this world is covered by water and remaining only 30% by land. We know what all are the advancements that are happening in space technology, okay, or in land. Basically, I just take it as a land. So 97, I mean, the 70% of the world is covered by water, and in which 97% is being covered by ocean. So what I would like to let you people understand fundamentally is the resource, the plenty of resource that is available in ocean. So how big the oceans are, and what are the resources that are available in this ocean. But unfortunately, now we are able to, or today we can see that people are trying to find whether it is livable in other planets by making use of the development in technology in space shuttles. People look about whether they can start their business in different planets, whether they can move people from this earth to some other planet. And there were huge development as far as satellites are concerned, missiles or whatever, we can take it in any example. Whereas it is still hard for people to reach the bottom of the sea. For example, I can tell you, as far as India is concerned, along the coastal regions of India, the maximum depth is 6 kilometers or 6,000 meters. Within the Indian coastal region, what I'm trying to tell is within the Indian coastal region, the maximum depth is 6,000 meters or 6 kilometers. Even now, we are doing research, we are trying to find a solution for manned submersible to reach the bottom of the sea and to see, explore what is available in the ocean or at the bottom of the ocean. So basically, in some places, the depth of the sea goes up to 12,000 meters or 12 kilometers. Then you can please think about how difficult it is, whether people are able to go deep for around some 10 kilometers or 11 kilometers or 12 kilometers. Why is this? Is the question. So I would like to just have this question in your mind. Why is this? Right? In case if we have a solution for this, then obviously you can think that how much we can explore this ocean, how much we can explore, how many resources we have. In case we can have at least an idea about what is the amount of resources that we have in the ocean that are buried in ocean, and how wealthy each and every country is. Or to be very simple, we are yet to explore the resources that are available in ocean. I'll be just letting you know the reasons why. And today, I should tell you that it was not like earlier. Now people are concentrating more in this underwater, and government is pumping a huge money for this research. And moreover, there are industries that are coming up who are investing on various sensors for doing research in this domain. Now, this next thing, what I would like to call upon is, this is the next thing which you would have obviously seen even today, and moreover, you would have seen this type of information. I'm not restricting to this. There are many like this. This type of information you would have come across in the news, in the newspaper, or in the visual media 10 years before, 15 years before, 5 years before. Even today it is existing. Why? We have to just ask a simple question: why? Why this happens? Why always there is a boundary problem? And boundary problem with respect to this is creating a serious casualty. That is very important. If the casualty is with respect to the life as well as the resource, the boat, apart from the fishes that they capture. Okay, because even next day if they go, they can capture the fishes. That is not a major issue here. Whereas coming to the life, which is very, very important, this is existing for many years. Why does this happens? Is a question which we should think. Hope you may be knowing this. I mean, very recently you would have come across this again in your WhatsApps. Can anyone tell who he is? Can anyone tell me who he is? It's a famous picture. That too recently, within 2 weeks, you would have just come across again and again about this picture. Madam, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, if your answer is no or not able to recall,
Kasab.
yes, Ajmal Kasab. So now can you recall what this incident refers to?
Mumbai incident.
Mumbai attack. Yes or no?
Yes.
That has happened only by the month of November. Yes or no? It has happened only by month of November. Okay, sorry, I'm just asking. That's how I'm asking to students. By November. Now, what is the link that I would like to give for this slide, this slide, this slide? It's very simple. Only thing is we are yet to explore. So basically, it is very important that we should know the technologies that we use for this underwater. Second thing, though we call that we are advanced, we are not able to stop this. And most importantly, since we are not able to stop this in a smaller scale, attack like this happened. Basically, with this slide, what I'm trying to tell you, do you know the way how they intruded into Mumbai? The path what they have taken is by sea, by ocean. Hope you have read it in the paper. So why all these things happens? So in this session, I would like to give you a brief idea or a note about understanding all these things. If you understand all these things, then obviously you may get some interest on looking into the various points. As I told you, artificial intelligence, how you can bring in artificial intelligence or the artificial intelligence enabled sensors and networking along with the 5G. In due course, you can understand whether 5G is possible or not in underwater. At least you can have all these things that can give you a solution for this underwater technology. So that is what I am trying to tell you. Now coming to this, I just don't want to repeat it again. This is just to give you a statistical survey. This is a old data. Okay, so this is not the latest data. It is some 3 to 4 years before data. You see that oceans are covered by 96.5%. Okay, whereas the other things are only the remaining portion, and that is further subclassified. And my interest is not on all these things. Our interest is only on this. So in the whole, 96.5% of the total water, what I'm trying to tell is 70% or 71% of, though it is covered by water, in that 96.5% is occupied by oceans. So this is the most important thing which we should remember. See, obviously we love to go to beach, and we love to spend time in going to beach and relax. Now, basically, what does this slide refers to? See, UNCLOS Maritime Zone has divided the sea region into various zones. So how it has classified? Basically, it has classified into two major aspects. One is called the national airspace, another one is called international airspace. So national airspace basically further classified into two. One is called internal waves, another one is called the next one. Okay, territorial sea. So what does it conveys? So you have to consider this is the place where you stand in the ocean and you are seeing ocean like this. You are seeing ocean like this. So this is generally the distance in oceans are referred in terms of nautical miles. 1 nautical mile is equal to 1.8 kilometer. For our reference, we can have it, or conversions we can make it 1 kilometer. I'm sorry, one nautical mile is equal to 1.8 kilometers. So when we take a ship or boat for data collection, in case if you want to know how far we are away from the shore, as I told you, this is the shore. How far we are from the shore, there are sensors that will give you the data in terms of nautical miles. So from that nautical miles, you have to convert it into kilometers, which will give us a simple understanding about how far we are from the shore. So this is the shore, and this is called as the internal waves. And like this, we have various zones. So this is called as the territorial sea. This territorial sea is 12 nautical miles from the internal waves. And next zone is classified as contiguous zone, and this contiguous zone is 12 nautical miles from the territorial sea, or I can tell you that the contiguous zone will be up to 24 nautical miles from the internal waves. And then the most important thing is we have our EEZ, exclusive economic zone, and after this exclusive economic zone we have our the area. So this is called as the continental shelf. Up to here we have our continental shelf. Now why or under what category all these things are classified, and who has a control on this is the question, or is the most important thing that we have to understand. See, each and everything, there is a reason why they have divided all these things. See, this is called as the baseline, which is nothing but very close to the land. I don't know how many of you have an experience of getting into harbor and have seen ships that are boarded for example, when they want to take the goods or when they want to just drop the goods. Basically, you should understand the operation of the ships coming into the shore and moving away from the shore. So all those things we call it as a shipyard. I don't want to go deep into that because that itself will take another 1 hour. What I'm trying to tell you is which are the places where ships are allowed to be parked. Very simple. In a simple language, I would like to tell this. Which are the places where ships are allowed to park is number one. Which are the places where ships are allowed to sail? Which are the places where the state government has control on the sea? Which are the places where the central government, I mean the India, for example, if it is along the coastal region of India, it is India or that country. That particular country has a control on it. Ethically, what are the activities that has to be done in the ocean? What are the activities that should not be done in the ocean? And as I told you, this exclusive economic zone, this is the place all resources that are available in this region. For example, from the baseline up to 200 nautical miles. Up to 200 nautical miles, except these 12 nautical miles. If you are very particular, you can exclude this or you can include this also. Up to 200 nautical mile is the place in the ocean where the state or the country can use the resources that are available in that particular area. After that, when you come to the area, this place, then obviously it becomes an international sea. Means the state or the country cannot have control in this area. So you just imagine, you just consider a global map and you can see the ocean or the sea And now you can visualize that what is the control of each and every country, and further in a smaller scale, the control of each and every state in a country, and the activities that they can do and the resources that are available in that place. I can give a simple example. Dubai. Dubai is considered as what to say, by dimension, it is a very small, by area, it is a very small uh, country, whereas by resource, it is huge. The reason is very simple. You can see that in this 200 nautical mile, they have a huge resource of oil. Within this 200 nautical mile, they have a huge resource of oil. That is the reason they were able to extract oil and they are rich. Hope this makes you understand what I'm trying to tell you. There are few countries where you can see that up to 100 nautical miles or up to 150 nautical miles, there may not be any resource. If that being the case, then obviously it is unfortunate. Because if you come to this area, the so-called the area, anybody can come in. Whichever country wants to make it, whichever country has the facilities, has the resources, whoever wants to do or whoever wants to make use can make use of this area. Whereas up to this is the place where they cannot come in. Am I clear with this? Because this is very important, because I'll be happy next time if you just go to any beach and if you see, it will be good if you see in this way, rather than seeing that you are able to see water till your eye vision. Am I clear? Am I clear? Can I have an acknowledgement, please?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
Am I connected? Yeah, am I connected first? Okay. So here you
Yes,
can see.
sir.
Okay. Yeah, here you can see that the classifications, the regions that it covers, and the activities that can happen here. So the coastal state is free to set laws, regulate use, and use any resource. Foreign vessels have no rights of passage within the internal waters. So in this region, foreign vessels will not be allowed. Whereas the territorial wave, here you can see the territorial sea is under the jurisdiction of the particular country. However, foreign ships, both merchant as well as military ships, are allowed to pass through it. And then coming to the next one. So like this, if you see, as I told you, economic zone. This is the region where the country and the state can totally make use of the resources like fishing, mining, oil exploration, marine research, all those things. So this is the basic fundamental understanding. It will be good if you have about the sea. Now coming to, so what are the types of communications that we have basically? Basically, we can do it in land, space, and ocean. And what are the applications we have? There are various applications. What I have listed is really very few. So seismic, pollution, ocean current, disaster, and AUV. This will give you a single sight of difference between the communication that happens in land and space and ocean. I have taken 5 important parameters in this slide, where I would like to make you feel the basic difference in those 5 important parameters which are required for communication. First and foremost thing is frequency. As far as wireless communication, terrestrial communications are concerned, the higher the frequency, we always prefer to go for a high frequency for a long distance transmission. Whereas it is totally opposite. Whereas for underwater, the frequency should be low, because the only source of signal that can be used is acoustic signal. Acoustic signals are always a low frequency signal. So the lower the frequency, the more the signal can be transmitted. So this itself you can understand the frequency. In case if I want to make use of the underwater sensor, then I have to see to it that the frequency should be low. And the second thing is distance. What is the distance that it can travel? Obviously, when I go for a high frequency signal, the distance traveled by it is very long. Whereas as far as ocean is concerned, the distance traveled by the signals will be short. Example, in case if you want to use an electromagnetic wave, yes, well and good, you can use an electromagnetic wave, but it will not travel even few meters. So the capability of the electromagnetic wave to travel in the ocean is very, very, very less. Whereas if you go for an acoustic signal with a very low frequency, then you can ensure that the signal is transmitted for at least few meters or few kilometers. And the third most important thing is speed of the signal, which is also very, very important. You know very well, in space we use light, so it is 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second. Whereas, you see, the speed of acoustic signal in ocean or water is only 1500 meters. It will have a speed of only 1500 meters per second and not more than that. And the type of signal, as I already told you, here you can use terrestrial, you can use a radio wave, whereas here you can use only an acoustic wave. And most important thing is the space or land will not have reverberation, whereas ocean will have reverberation, and reverberation is one of the major factor that will affect the signal that is propagated in ocean. Or in a simple line, I can tell you that the reverberation factor has to be considered more, and it has to be eradicated, or it should be totally made nil. Otherwise, it will create noise to the signal that of interest, the signal which is of my interest. Now coming to this is also a old data, because today there may be an increase in this, all these things, and we are able to achieve some good transmission or data rate today. So this will give you with respect to various parameters. Speed, as I told you, for terrestrial it is 3 into 10 power 8 meters per second, whereas for underwater it is 1500 meters per second only. Data rate, here it is 1 Mbps to 1 Gbps, whereas here it is very hard to achieve GB. It is not possible to achieve even Mbps. Even now, people are struggling to have a good Mbps. And signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio also here you can achieve high, whereas here it is very low. Bandwidth, we don't have much limitations on bandwidth here, whereas here it has a huge limitation on bandwidth. Coming to most important, costs. Today you can see there are n number of sensors that are coming out because of the advancement or development in the sensors. The cost of the sensors are also coming down. Whereas if you take these underwater, the sensors are highly expensive. I can tell you one simple reason why the sensors are highly expensive. It is not only because of the material that is being used in underwater. It is because of two factors. One is the market. Number of people, those who are going to use, and what is the vast area of application in which it is going to be used is number one. And the second most important thing is anything that you deploy in ocean, there is no guarantee that you will retrieve it back, though we take utmost care in order to retrieve the sensors back. There are various factors where unfortunately there are chances for us to miss the sensors. So for all those reasons, to my understanding and to my experience, the cost of the sensors that we use for this underwater research, or I can even simply tell you that this underwater research is it's a highly expensive research. I can even tell you that it is a highly expensive research. And then deployment, less fast, whereas here it is fast. So spatial correlation, it has more correlation, whereas less correlation. What is the power that is required for the sensors that are being used? It is less, whereas the power that are used are also more. And you can see here the most important, the distance between the transmitters and receivers is not limited. We can have in tens or hundreds of kilometers, whereas here you see the distance between one node and another node cannot be more than 500 meters. 500 meters itself is a big range. So these are the factors or the parameters or the challenges that we have in this underwater. Now, apart from that, okay, all those things are with respect to the signals or sensors or whatever it is. What is most important is channel. What are the challenges that we face when we want to pass a signal in the underwater channel? The first and foremost, most important thing is pressure. In the beginning, I told you, we are finding it very difficult for a manned submersible or for a human being to go and reach, with the help of a technology, to go and reach the sea bottom, which is around 6 kilometers. One of the major reasons why we are not able to go is pressure. So pressure will be high, very, very high. As you go deep into the ocean, the pressure keeps on increasing. So in a shallow region, okay, at a depth of some 10 meters, 50 meters or 100 meters, there will not be huge pressure. Whereas if you start moving in, the pressure will be more. So that is a very big challenge. Second one is temperature. The temperature will get reduced, but to some extent, yes, it is manageable. I won't say that it is not at all manageable. It is manageable. And the third one, as I mentioned, the only form of signal that supports for signal transmission in underwater is acoustic communication. And then the next one is the corrosive sea nature or seawater nature, and most important is absolute darkness. So it will be totally dark and we may not be able to visualize anything. So all these things, and the fourth one and the next one is the limitation in our understanding and the resources, human resource. We have only very limited human resource who can work in all these things, and finally the suitable technology. So these are the challenges that we have when we want to work in underwater. Now coming to, okay, these are the challenges we have, and these are the challenges we have with respect to the signal. In spite of that, it has a huge application. So it can be used for flood monitoring, it can be used for gathering oceanographic data, sediment deposition. I don't know how many of you have recently visited Pondicherry Beach. In case if, I mean, since I am from Pondicherry, I can even tell you this in a better way. See, earlier, we were earlier in the sense, maybe in the past 5 to 10 years, we cannot step down into the sea. In order, for example, if you want to just wet our feet, it is not possible in Pondicherry Beach because the waters will come and touch till there will be like a, what to say, a small compound like structure. So the waters will come and hit till there, and they are having more stones in order to block the water coming further. Right. Whereas now you can see that artificially they have created these type of structures where now we can get down, step down, and we can wet our feet. Now this sediment deposition, all these things are because of the advancement in technology. They studied about the corrosive nature, what is an alternate, and how important this sand in ocean, all those things. And because of those developments, coastal management, generally we call it as a coastal management, and now we are able to see all those things are which we can witness in today. And then chemical and biological aspects that are available here, water quality monitoring, pollution monitoring, oil and gas pipeline monitoring, this is one of the most important thing. And then seismic monitoring. In this aspect, I can tell you by 2004 tsunami, nobody was aware of tsunami. Only after it hit and it has taken the lives of many and the livability of many, we were aware of tsunami. Whereas today I can tell you it is not necessary for us to be scared about tsunami, because there are systems that are deployed called the tsunami buoys along the coastal regions of India, and the tsunami will not happen in fractions of time. So I don't want to go deep into that technology. I just want to make you understand or feel. Tsunami will not hit the shore immediately. Okay, so today we are safe, at least to get an information that whether there is a possibilities that tsunami will occur, by what time, what is the time it will take to hit, and these informations will help us for us to evacuate from that place, so that we can, to the maximum possible, we can be in a safer place. And to extend or to add on to this, today you can see that the prediction of rainfall is accurate. Earlier, we used to joke, in case if they tell it in the television that we will have rain tomorrow, for sure we will tell that we will not have rain. And people used to just make joke on that. Whereas today you see, we are exactly able to predict what is the possibilities. I would like to tell you that all these things are because of the development in the sensor technology. Because of the developments in the sensor technology, because of the development in prediction algorithms, that is very, very important. Development in the prediction algorithms, and this is the place where you can think about this artificial intelligence. That is the reason I'm just giving in an elaborated way. Because of all these things, today we are able to exactly predict, and we are also successful in that, and future for sure it is going to be even advanced. And the next, another most important thing, I don't know how many people are aware of this. You can take it from me. This Indian government is very curious about preserving our culture. Okay, preserving about the treasure and the places which are being drowned. So they are quite interested to learn about all those things, and if possible, why can't we excavate all those things? So hopefully you would have heard about Kiredi. Nowadays people are just looking into, are seriously looking into Kiredi, and we are looking into that. So I would like to just tell only one thing about at this point of time. Pumbuhar, well known, famous Pumbuhar. Today that city is not here. Second thing is Mahabalipuram. In Mahabalipuram, the history says that there were 7 shore temples. Whereas today we are able to see only 1 shore temple. What happened to the remaining 6 shore temples? Like this, Dwaraka, the place where Lord Krishna was born, as per uh, the holy books. Okay. Now, these are the places. I have mentioned only very few. If you just investigate along the coastal regions, you can excavate many things that are drowned in the ocean. So this is another area of research where you can think about. Now, as I told you, earthquake and tsunami detections, I don't want to spend more time. And moreover, military applications. So this is a bomb or mine detection and submarine detection, all these things for defense purposes, all those things. So these are the various applications we have. You have a huge applications that we have in underwater. So this is what I would like to tell. So here you can see the ships, these pipelines, and this is the submerged city, some submerged cities, right? So there are technology, there is a development in technology. Today we are able to detect all these things. So I'm just trying to tell you the various applications. Now getting into, as I told you, into communication. When we look into the communication, actually how the setup should be. For your understanding, you can just follow this. So as far as communication is concerned, basically we know a communication system comprises of, there should be a source, there should be a medium, and there should be a receiver. And then we process the signal and we try to know what the signal that is being transmitted. So here you can see. So I have a transmitter which is kept at some distance, depth in the ocean. And similarly, I have a receiver which is deployed in the ocean at some distance. Now, this transmitter will pump a signal. We generally call it as a pumping of signal. Okay, generally we make use of a pulse signals. So we will be pumping a signal. When the signal is pumped, there are various ways how the signal will reach the receiver. So here I have shown you various cases where you can see that there is a direct line where the signal from this transmitter reaches the receiver in this form, and here you can see that signal goes and you see that it gets reflected by the water column. This is the signal which gets reflected by the water column at various depths. Here you can see that the signal goes, it hits the surface of the, the bottom of the sea floor, and then reflecting back, and some signals will penetrate. That is what I'm trying to tell you. Some signals will penetrate into the sea bottom, and further it may get reflected back. Now these are the ways how a signal will receive at the receiver. Now what is most important is we should know the ways how the signal has reached the receiver, and we have to fit in the mechanism in order to eliminate the losses because of all these things. Only if we eliminate the losses because of all these things, then we can estimate the signal properly. Apart from this, there is another most important thing that is called the profile of signal. This red is called as the profile of the signal. When you ping a signal in an ocean, it will not go like this, as how I have shown. It will not go like this. It has its own profile. It will go only in this form. It depends on the depth and the velocity of the signal. So anybody who is interested to do an underwater signal processing or underwater communication research, obviously the first and foremost thing which we should understand is the profile of signal in ocean. Basically, at the surface of the sea, if you see, as I told you, it always restricts to 1500 meters per second. The maximum velocity is 1500 meters per second. If you see here, you can see that as the distance is less, this is the depth, water depth. So less than 100 meters, it restricts somewhere here. From 100 to 1000 meter, if you see, the velocity will reduce. And further from 1000 meter, it starts increasing. It will start increasing. So maximum, it will go up to 1540 meters per second, not more than that. So when you are doing your research, basically we should know the profile of the signal, means the velocity of the signal. Able to understand and follow me? Can anyone please acknowledge the coordinatarian? Can I get a response from the coordinatarian whether you are able to follow me?
Sir?
Able to follow me, madam?
Yes, sir. It's sir. We are following, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So what I'm trying to tell you is, in case if you deploy, for example, I told you here, this is the depth at which I'm going to place my sensor. Now you just fix the depth. If I place my sensor up to 5 meters or 10 meters, then obviously the velocity will be 1500. If I place it somewhere up to 100 meters, then obviously the signal that I ping when it moves, okay, because I'm going to deploy my system only at 100 meters. Let us consider a receiver at 100 meters, then obviously its velocity will not be 1500 meters. If I keep my sensors at around 1000 meters depth, then obviously it will have a velocity of only this. So all these things are important parameter that we should keep in our mind, which is related to the depth at which we do this communication, the depth at which we process the communication. And this profile basically depends on these three parameters in the ocean. One is the temperature, the salinity, another one is pressure. In the beginning, as I told you, as the depth increases, the pressure will increase. You see, as the depth increases, the pressure will also increase. Salinity, the salinity also will increase, but there is no major difference in the salinity. So generally, it will be at 33 ppt, or somewhere between 33 to 35 ppt only, even if you go deep into the ocean. Whereas with respect to temperature, as I told you, the temperature keeps on reducing. The temperature will keep reducing, and the velocity of the signal depends on these three factors. To be very simple, the velocity of the signal is highly affected by the pressure. That is what I'm just trying to tell you. Now, as I told you, sound, generally, sound is a mechanical wave. So the nature what it follows is only a longitudinal wave in water. So it moves only in this form, in a longitudinal wave form. Generally, it is represented, the frequencies are represented in hertz. So what is the, as I told you, so basically it comprises of a source, a medium, and then a detector. I don't want to spend more time in this. So what is the unit for it? The unit for it is generally Pascal. So generally, the sensors that we use for signal transmission or signal receptions, it will be united in the form of micropascals. Generally, it will be in micropascals. Okay. So what are the different types of sensors that we can use? So first one is called as an active sensor or active sonar. Generally, we call it as an active sonar. Another one is a passive sensor or passive sonar. And the third one is generally it is called as a sonar, sound navigation and ranging. And the sonar equation depends on two parameters. One is the losses that it comprises of and probability of detection. These are the two important things. At this point, I would like to make you have a better understanding about what is the difference between an active and passive sensors. So there are two ways how we can receive a signal in underwater. One is I can directly go and deploy my receiver and I can collect the data. A receiver is nothing but a piezoelectric sensor, which is nothing but a small piezoelectric device. I can just go deploy the piezoelectric device or the sensor in my ocean, and depending upon the range of the piezoelectric, its capability to receive, I can collect all the sounds that are available in the ocean. If there is no source or the source of the signal of our interest, and if we have only a sensor to receive the data, then it is called active sensor. Sorry, active sensor is the one where we should have a source. I'm sorry, I have made it in a different way. Passive sensor is the one which doesn't have any source. Example, I deploy my receiver, it collects the data, I process the data and look into what the data is. That is called passive sensors. Whereas active sensor is the one for full communication. I am interested in transmitting a data. For example, I am the transmitter and there is another person at a few meters away and receiver. For example, I can tell you submarine. So there are two submarines and both the submarines want to communicate. Means there will be a signal that will be pumped by submarine 1, and that signal will pass through the underwater channel and that will be received by the submarine 2. Those types of sensors are called as active sensors, because there should be a source to generate a signal and there should be a receiver to receive a signal, and those types of sensors are called as the active sensors. Whereas the second one, passive, I'm quite interested to note down the sounds that are produced in the ocean. If that being the case, then obviously I just go with my passive sensor, I deploy it, it just collects the sound, and those types are called as the passive sensors. So basically, we should be very clear about what type of sensor we are going to use. Now, what are the various losses it has while we transmit it in a underwater medium? First one is a transmission loss. Second one is noise level. When we talk about this noise level, it comprises of two. So NL is always SN plus AN or AN plus SN. So SN is nothing but the self noise. Self noise is nothing but the noise generated by the sensor itself, and then the noise generated while handling the sensors. All those things are called as the self noise. Second one is ambient noise. Ambient noise is nothing but any unwanted external noise that happens in the ocean are called as the ambient noises. So the noise level is the summation of these two. So we have to consider the self noise by the equipment and the way how it is being handled. And the second one is ambient noise, all other unwanted sources of noise that are available in the ocean. Both put together is the noise level. And then the source level, what is the level of the source that we are going to use? Directivity index, how focused the sensors are. And then the target strength. This target strength plays a vital role as far as signal transmission in underwater, because most of the signals that we receive are reflected signals. So the reflection depends on the target, and the reflection depends on the material of the target too. Hence, target strength is important. Now, this is the formula for the passive sonar. So, SL minus TL minus NL plus DI should be always greater than or equal to DT, which is nothing but detection threshold. Only when all these things are greater than the detection threshold, then the passive sonar can acquire the data. Example you can see here. This is the detection threshold. This is the source loss. This is the loss. Okay, self noise. And here you can see the transmission loss. What is the loss that is occurred? This is the noise level. This is the source that generates the loss. All these two we have to consider, and then we have our directionality, in which direction it is, and from that we have to consider our DT. Now we will be considering our ambient noise as well as reverberation. In the beginning I told you reverberation plays a vital role. So the reverberation loss should be always greater than NL plus DI. So this is the simple equation that is being used. The reason why I have brought in this equation is very simple. When you want to make use of a communication system, before we start transmitting our data, we have to evaluate all these things, or we should know exactly what is the sensor that we have to deploy for what type of application. So for all those things, basic fundamental communication, if you want to make in underwater, then depending upon the type of sonar, whether it is going to be an active sonar or passive sonar, accordingly, all these things has to be calculated in clear hand, and it should be ensured that it satisfies these things. Whereas here, as I told you, for active means there will be a transmission and then a reflection. Both will happen. So that is the reason it is 2 TL. Transmission loss will be twice. Whereas in a passive sonar it will be only one. It will not be 2. So how to calculate the signal to noise ratio and then reduction threshold. Coming to figure of merit for passive sonar and then figure of merit for active sonar. All these things are very simple equations which we should keep in mind. So this is only for a fundamental learning. Don't want to get into this. What are the various losses that we have? So obviously transmission loss are 2 types. One is called the spreading loss, another one is called attenuation. And the third most important thing, as I told you, this attenuation basically comprises due to absorption and then due to scattering and reverberation. So these are the parameters, various parameters that we have. Coming to ambient noises, as I told you, it is not because of the source, it is because of the channel environment. So it can be because of these 4 major. One is hydrodynamics, because of the hydrodynamics nature. Another one is called seismic nature. Another one is biological. Another one is ocean traffic. So these are the fundamentals that we should know when we are going to make use of any sensors in underwater. Coming to basic block diagram of an underwater system. So this diagram represents an active sonar because we have a transmitter, hence it will become an active. In case if I don't have the transmitter and I have only my receiver and the receiver collects the data from the channel, then it becomes a passive. That is what I'm trying to tell. So generally what we do, we just signal of our interest, we pump the signal into the channel and the channel tries to pass the signal to the place where the receiver is. We have the ambient, various sources of ambient noises that gets added. So obviously we require a denoising technique. So without denoising technique, we may not be able to detect the signal properly. So we have to select the appropriate denoising technique and we have to eliminate the signals that are added in the channel. Coming to various ranges of frequencies and various ranges of sources of noises that can happen in underwater. For your interest, I can tell you, for example, I can tell you dolphin. Dolphin is the one which will produce 7 kilohertz of frequency. You can see here. Dolphin and tooth whales. Okay. You can, what I'm trying to tell you here is very simple. If you are in a location where the population of dolphin is more and you want to pump a signal and you ensure that the signal is received on the other end, then obviously make sure that you are not using the frequency which will match with the frequency of dolphin. For example, if your frequency of interest is 5 to 8 kilohertz and you want to transmit the signal in the region where there are more dolphins, then the dolphin sound will mask the signal of your interest. That will overlap with your signal and it will see to it that your signal is not received at the receiver end. So these are the various ranges of frequencies of different ambient noises sources. So when we look into research in this, obviously we have to consider or we have to look into the appropriate frequency at appropriate location at appropriate depth. So these are the various parameters that we have to look into. So these are the various sources of noises. So people, those who intensely do research in a particular region for particular thing, will always have an idea or have an information about all these sources of noises. Now this is what I was telling earlier. So we have a system, we have a transmitter, and then we have a receiver. The point which you should listen here is, I have a transmitter at 5 meters depth and I have a receiver which ranges from 5 meters to 30 meters depth. Now this transmitter will have a receiver tuned here for example, maybe exactly at 5 meters, whereas here the depth varies. It is not same. So it is important for us to see the profile of sound, because the profile of sound will have its impact here. And then it is very important for us to know the components that are present in this region. For example, water comprises of various components, and then the sediments comprises of various components, because the water and the sediment, the acidity of the water components, and then the sediment, different types of sediment components has the property of absorption of signal. So those are the parameters that also we should look in. That is the reason again and again I'm insisting that we should be very particular in knowing the channel characteristics. This is what we call it. It's called as study of channel characteristics. So this is the thermocline. As I told you, the temperature, pressure and salinity is graph. Now this is the system that we have used when we collected the data. See here you can see that one hydrophone. So this is nothing but a passive sonar. The reason is we are not going to pump any signal. We are just going to deploy a system like this, and to the limitations of this piezoelectric sensor, it will collect the acoustic signals. What are all acoustic signal available in this region will be collected by this, and the same acoustic signals that are available in this region will be collected by this. Hence it is a passive sonar. So we have used a system like this. We had two sensors. So one sensor we made it here and another sensor we made it here. For simple reason, in case if I deploy a system like this once, now I am able to collect the data which is available at 5 meter, at the same time the data which is available at 20 meter, which will help me to see the difference in the data I am able to receive. Now the difference in data is purely because of the channel characteristics that will help me, and the various other sources that are available near the hydrophones. That will help me to have a better understanding about how the signal is being affected when it is being transmitted at 5 meter, when it is being transmitted at 20 meters, and to come to a conclusion whether it is safe to transmit a signal between 5 meters to 20 meters. So all these things are pre-analysis that we have to do before we start pumping the signal in ocean. Now this is the structure. As I told you, this is the structure we used. So this is where I am pointing. This is hydrophone 1. Here he is pointing the second hydrophone. So this is around 280 centimeters, and the total length of this system is 330 centimeters, and from here to here it is 40 centimeter. So this we deploy. So before we sail into the sea, we always check the stability, because stability check is very, very important. The reason is very simple. When I deploy the system in the ocean, I have to ensure that the system is in that particular location. Because of water current, because of high water current, what will happen is I may think that I have, for example, I would have deployed my system here, and I may think that my system is somewhere around 10 meters or 15 meters deep here. But because of water current, it may be somewhere else to the limitations of 10 meters or 20 meters, whatever is the length of the cable that I have deployed. Able to understand? So for that, what is most important is I have to check that my sensors are not floating away from the place of my interest where I want to collect the data. That is the reason we have made a structure like this, and this is nothing but a PVC pipe where it is fully packed with semi-solid content. So when I add semi-solid content, what I do is I increase the weight of the system. When I increase the weight of the system, obviously I ensure that the system is stable in the place where I am deploying the sensor. So this stability check is very, very important when we deploy any sensors. You can see this. These are the photos where we deploy and making use of the data acquisition system. We collect the data, we record the data in our system, and then we process the data. So this is for two sensors. Whereas if you have a number of sensors, we can have multiple sensors array. This is called as an hydrophone array, where you can see that it has multiple sensors. Now you can deploy it in any form. If you want to deploy it in vertical, you can deploy it in vertical. If you want to deploy it in horizontal, you can deploy it in horizontal. And you can see, for example, you just imagine I'm deploying this in a vertical form. You can study the characteristics of channel from this to from this in between. Over this distance, I can study the characteristics of the channel. You see this? This is the 6-element array what we have in our lab, and the cost of this array sensor hydrophone is 3.75 lakhs. It is around 3.75 lakhs, and this is the single sensor. I told you here. This one, in this, and this is one. That is the single sensor. This is a single sensor we used. And basically you can do all this testing in-house. See, directly we will not take all these things to the ocean. First we will do it in a in-house. We will test all these things in an in-house. And once when we confirm that yes, we are able to do the process perfectly, and then only we will go to the sea for deployment and data collection or data transmission, analysis and study purpose. So this is the ATF lab. Here you can see the stability. This is what I meant. It is being held in a vertical position, and you see here, this is the ATF acoustic test facilities where they check whether it is stable. This is, you can do it as a stability check. Moreover, you can see what is the quality of signal that is being received, whether the hydrophones are working properly and whether it is able to, the sensitivity, that is very, very important. How sensitive the hydrophones are, whether it is able to receive the data of a very low frequency. So depending upon the type of sensors we plan. So like this, all these testings will be done before we go to the sea. So this is the deployment process. As I told you, this is the deployment and retrieval process which we do. Now coming to this one, I don't know whether it is visible. You can see there is a small black color, which is nothing but a transmitter, acoustic transmitter. So basically how we do this transmission of signal in real time is, we will be hiring two boards, where using one board we will deploy this hydrophone, which is nothing but the receiver, and using another board we will be deploying this transmitter. So this transmitter will be deployed at whatever distance. I showed in one of my previous slide, about 5 meters depth I have my transmitter, and at about 30 meters depth I have my receiver, or it can be from at 20 meters or even at 5 meters. So using one board we will have our transmitter, using another board we will deploy our receiver, and then we will start pumping the signal using the transmitter, and we see to it that how the data is being collected at the receiver end. When we did like this, this is the power spectral density. This is the power spectral density of the data we have collected. Actually, this result is for the various wind noise. So you know very well that when you go to sea, you can see that there will be variation in wind. So the variation in wind also affects the signal that is being transmitted in shallow region. So here you can see for different frequencies what is the effect of the signal with respect to the sound pressure level for various wind speeds. So from this you can understand what is the effect of wind for that particular frequency. So this will give you an idea about what will happen if you transmit a signal in this condition or in this position. Here you can see. So this is the signal of my interest. 7 kHz is the signal of my interest I pump. And here you can see the noise. This is the spectrum of the noise alone without the signal. Now when the signal is getting transmitted in the underwater noisy channel, then the signal gets added with the noise. Signal plus noise. In my previous slide, I told you that we should require a good denoising technique. In case if we apply that good denoising technique, then we can eliminate all the noises and we will get back our signal. So this is a simple representation of a research. Yes, how we can do using the hydrophones at various depths. Any doubt till here? Because I have completed one portion of my presentation. Further, I will be rushing because this is the basic concept and the basic understanding about the communication. Shall I continue?
Yes, sir. Yes, please, sir.
Okay. So coming to the system architecture, this is a very simple. I have few more also. You see, these are the ways. I have a transmitter at the C bottom, and then I have a receiver at the C bottom. You can see if I transmit a signal, these are the ways how the signals will get reflected from the C surface, from the C bottom, all these things. Along with this, we have the ambient sources of noises also, that also will get added. Now, how I can overcome? See, these are the anchors. These are the systems that are anchored through wireless. We can even transmit it through wireless, and this is the sea surface. Along the surface, we have the ships and the system that will acquire the data. So, along with this, we have our own ROVs also, which will transmit our submarines, which will transmit the data. So, basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that there is an advancement in underwater communication. That is what I'm trying to tell by this slide. There is an advancement where people can think about various frequencies and how the signals can be transmitted and how you can overcome the noises that will disturb the signal in the channel. Now, what is most you see here? These are various, all these things, each and everything is different sensor that are used in underwater today. So you can see that except one, even one is related to this. So this is what we call it as a sync. Generally, people who are working in sensor nodes, they may be knowing. This is called as the sync node, and all those things are the other nodes. Now, for various applications, we have various types of sensors, and all these sensors collects the data and it provides to the sync. And further, the sync will have an antenna where they will process the data and they will transmit to satellite. From the satellite, it will come to the processing centers. Processing centers are like NIOT, NIO, Goa, INCOI, wherever, and whoever it is. Now, these are the various sensors. So, each and everything has its own principle of data transmission and data retrieval. So, what is most important? So, with this, I would like to convey that yes, there is a necessity or there is a huge scope for underwater signal or underwater communication in ocean, and obviously it requires high frequencies. We have to go for high frequencies, and basically it requires a modem. Basically, we have to go for a modem, the requirement of modem. This is the general architecture of a modem. I don't want to talk more on this modem. See here, this is how. So we will be having a modem at the sea floor, and there will be another modem at the sea surface. So basically, the sensors will be connected to. Okay, basically there will be a sensor, and the sensors will be connected to the modem. You just imagine these are the sensors which are deployed in the sea floor or anchored in the sea floor. So now the sensors provides the data to the modem where there is a conversion of frequency happens, and from there it comes to the transducer which is placed on the surface of the sea, and it collects the data and then it transmits. Hence the importance of modem comes in. Okay, before we deploy it in the sea, this is how it will be tested. For example, what is the distance at which my modem can transmit the data without any loss? What is the data rate at which it transmits the data? You see here, I have one boy, here I have another boy. These two boys are displayed with a distance of 20 meters, with a difference of 20 meters. So here you can see a transducer, here you can see a modem. Now you see this transducer will pick up the data and it will pump the signal, and this modem records the data, and all these recordings will be done here. So hence they ensure that yes, my system is able to transmit my signal up to 20 meters without any loss. These are the different types of modems that are available. There are various requirements, and this gives the merits of each types of modem. So in case if you want to go for an Aquatech, they are low power consumption. If you want to go for Evologics, then you can go up to 8,000 meters. If you want to go for AM, they use OFDM technology. If you want to go for linguistic, then obviously the frequency of operation And then micron data modem, where here it is a miniature in size and easy to handle. And similarly, this one is also range. So basically, it comprises of various types of modems. These are the various modems that are available. Various modem which comes along with the system. So with this, I have completed the modem. Next, I'm just going to touch on two things. One is called the side scan sonar and multi-beam sonar. So what for it is used? It is used for collecting data which is at the sea floor. So it can be even like an imaging like technique. You can see here, it is a side scan sonar and then we have a multi-beam sonar. What is the basic principle behind it? See, always side scan sonar should be like a towed system. Means you cannot fix it. You cannot fix it with the vessel. You have to make it as a tow fish. Tow fish means then you should have an a winch like system, and then you should start pulling it. If you start pulling it, it will keep moving. What is most important here is, as the name indicates, the transducer, it will start collecting the data which are on its side. See here, it will scan data here, it will scan data here. So pictorially, if you see, this is the water column. Exactly at the or below the side scan sonar, it will not collect any data. For example, I can tell you that it has its eye on its sides. To be very simple, it has its eyes on its sides so that it visualizes the things that are available on the side. Hence, it is called a side scan sonar. On the right hand side and on the left hand side, but it will not look which is exactly at the bottom. Now, what is the purpose of this side scan sonar? You can see here, it will collect the images. It can collect the images. Now coming to, you see here you can see exactly at the bottom it will not collect the data, whereas on the sides it will collect the data. Here you see exactly at the bottom it will not collect, whereas on the other sides it will collect. This is the general side scan sonar. So this is the sonar. As I told you, this is the sonar. So it will flash its acoustic signal on the side. These are the various types of side scan sonars that are available. So these are the equipments. As I told you, a winch, a tow fish, and it comprises, this is the transducer processor. So all these things should be fixed and we have to tow it. When you tow it, you will collect the data. You see, what are the various ways how the side scan sonar or different beams will be formed? It can be in the form of a lead line. So the data will be in the form of a lead line or like a single beam. It will make the focus as a single beam, or it will make the focus as a multiple beam. When it makes it as a multiple beam, then various spectrums of data will be collected. See, it totally depends on how and what you want to survey. So this is next one is called as a multi-beam. So multi-beam, see, this is for a shallow region. Whereas if you want to go for a deep region, if you want to survey the structure of the sea floor, then obviously you have to go for multi-beam. Whereas here it uses only a single beam, a single frequency, whereas it uses a multiple frequencies. Whereas the principle here is it can be mounted in two ways. One is either you can mount it inside or at the bottom. So bottom of the ship, the bottom of the ship or the hull of the ship will have the mounted this multi-beam echo sounder. So basically what happens is the area or the region where you want to survey, it will flash the acoustic signal, and wherever it flashed, it goes, it hits the floor, and the signal will get reflected, and those reflected signal will be collected, and those data will be processed. What is the basic difference between a side scan sonar and multi-beam sonar? Multi-beam sonar will ping data exactly at the bottom, whereas side scan sonar will not ping data at the bottom. That is the difference. Now you see, this is what I told as a side mounted. We are mounting it on the side, whereas this is the one which I told at the bottom. We can mount it at the bottom. Mounting of multi-beam sonar. You see here, it is placed at the bottom of the hull of the ship. So it is placed here. So whenever we want to collect data using this multi-beam, then we have to on this, on in the sense it is controlled. Then the multi-beam will pump the signal to the board. Then the another interesting is a sub-bottom profiler. You see, side scan sonar has a limitation of scanning the data, it will give in the form of image. The second one, it will give the profile. It will not the image. It will not give the image. It will give the profile of the sea floor. Whereas, in case if I want to know, or if I want my signal to penetrate into the surface, I mean the bottom of the sea, and I want to see how it is further deep in, then obviously I should go for sub-bottom profiler, where you see here, it will penetrate to the bottom and it will get reflected. Further it will penetrate, see the layers, it will get reflected. Further it will penetrate and it will reflect. So by making use of this, we can tell that what is below or beneath the sea bottom. That also we can identify. Sometimes we can estimate whether it is a clay or a rock or a sand, to what depth it is rock, to what depth it is clay. All those analysis, all those information regarding all those things, we can do it using this sub-bottom profile. So basically the operation frequency, it ranges, side scan sonar operates at 100 kilohertz to 400 kilohertz. So single beam is 12 kilohertz to 200, multi-beam is 12 to 200 kilohertz. So this is the Sagar Manjusha ship, where it is bottom mounted. Multi-beam is bottom mounted. So we made use of this ship and we collected the data. This is the team we went. So this is it. So the ship will have a lab. Okay, the ship will have a lab. So in the lab, you can see these are the processor. So all the single beam data will be collected through this. All the multi-beam data will be collected through this. And this is the data processing unit. This is the data storage. And this is the transceiver. So through this only we pump the signal, and through this only we get the signal, the transceiver. So the all processing will be carried out. We have to collect the data and then we have to process the data in order to get the data in a correct format. So these are the locations. We just surveyed at different locations. Starting from Chennai, we went up to Chidambaram, Pumbuhar. Up to Pumbuhar we went. This is the survey location. These are the locations we surveyed using the multi-beam sonar. This is called as the run line. So it's a big topic. I don't want to talk about this. Consider this is the ocean. So first we have to mark the run line, and the ship will move on this run line only. It is like a path in ocean. We have to define this path, and the ship will move on the path only, and we will be collecting data exactly at the bottom of it. So all these things requires more information regarding how and what we are going to do. So this is how the format of the data will be. Here you can see on the screen. So data monitoring, when we are logging the data, you can see this is how it will be, where it gives various data. Here you can see whether it is in start or in stop condition, whether we have started logging the data or not. And the second one, you can see the sonar snippet. So this is how the data. So from this itself, while the data is being collected itself, you can have a look at feel whether it has something at the bottom or it doesn't have anything. So for that, this is one. And this is the signal transceiver profile. So how the signal is, how its profile is. This is the data logging memory. So how much data is logging, what is the space that is available for more data to be logged. And this is the run line. As I told you, this is the survey run line. And this is the compass, which will give you the direction, in which direction we are moving. The vehicle is moving, the vessel. We generally call it as a vessel. The ships are called as the vessels, is moving. And here you can see the service, the survey data location. So everything will be on the screen. We can play with this. So this is how we do the data, and different types for spike data, various types of data we have. So this will give you an idea about all these things. You can see the various structures, multi-beam, snippet data. So this is the lab. I told you, this is the lab where we will be processing or where we will be collecting the data when we are working on. So it requires huge discussion, because in case the place where we deploy our system, we may not be able to have the data. So obviously it requires more planning, and accordingly we have to make our vessel move. And for your information, the charge for the vessel per day, or I should not tell it as a charge, the amount that is being spent for a vessel to be navigated per day will be around from 5 lakhs to 6 lakhs. Okay, that much is the amount that has to be spent in case if you want to make use of vessels like this. For your information, I can tell you we want to have a data collection during last August. So we approached the vessel management cell. See, unfortunately, because of more restrictions now, because of Corona as well as the funding, all those things, still now the vessel management cell haven't charged us anything. It is totally free of cost, and we are able to do all these things. When we made that request, they said that they are able to support us in all facilities, but only thing is they want us to bear the maintenance charge of the vessel for 1 week, at which we are interested to take the vessel, and the charge what they laid is 25 lakhs. So this is for your information. I'm just telling you because I told you it is highly expensive. In case if you don't have these facilities, then obviously we cannot do this type of research. That is what I'm trying to do. So basically, that is what my conclusion is. That is what is my slide talks about. So basically, here I thought that I would like to give you an idea about what are the different types of signals, and when we want to transmit a signal in an underwater, what are the how the channel and the losses that we have to consider, and then how to make use of a hydrophone, how to make use of a side scan sonar, what type of data it will give, and how to make use of a multi-beam sonar and what type of data we can expect from those multi-beam sonars are the limitations which I thought that I can give today. So here is a small video for a conclusion where you can see a real-time data, how it works. See, this is the run line. This is the run line. Here you can see the movement of ship. The ship keeps on moving here. So we have to mark the run line. On the run line, the ship will keep moving. Here you can see in an expanded way. In an expanded way, you can see the movement of the ship. And when it is moving, you can see how the data is, the data collection is. This is the beam, multi-beam. As I told you, this is how it collects the data. It will ping the data exactly at the bottom. Exactly at the bottom of the ship, it will ping the data. So it will go hit and it will get the data reflected back. See, when we use a multi-beam echo sounder, we can take the side scan data also in that, because multi-beam will always have a side scan data too. So it is up to us. In case if you are very particular about the side scan data also, then we have to enable that also. You can even take the single beam data. You see the vehicle movement, the vessel movement. This is the run line. Means that this is the area it covers in the ocean. So the vehicle is moving here and the multi-beam is pumping the data and the multi-beam covers this area. That is what is the understanding. It covers this much area. So thank you. So this is the conclusion of my talk, and I think that I have restricted to the timing that is provided. I don't know whether how far I have done justice. So that's all from my end. If you have any questions, I can take some couple of questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Idea about
Participants-
simulations available. Yeah, there is a question on. Can you give me some idea about the simulations available? Yes, there are. See, initially when we started making use of MATLAB because we should know what all our strength and weakness. See, the sensor systems, all these things, what I told you, for example, the multi-beam sonar, the minimum cost is 20 lakhs and it goes up to crores. In the side scan sonar, the minimum cost is 4 lakhs and it goes up to 20 lakhs. Actually, I wish that everyone to please have a look over my lab, where you can see the facilities we have. It is enough if you just type this UWARL at SSN. Now, when we started working on that hydrophone, actually hydrophone, as I told you, it comes around 3.5 to 3.7 lakhs. So that was the seed money that was provided by SSN. So SSN said that, okay, you want to do interest in this, we can't support you with a huge money. You just think about any 1 or 2 sensors which you want to purchase. So I said that yes, it is enough if I have one hydrophone. So that 6 element hydrophone array is the one which we purchased in the beginning. So the supporting we made very sure that we want to make use of an open source tool. So obviously you can collect the data, you can put it in MATLAB and you can start working in MATLAB. Whereas the side scan sonar, it will not work in MATLAB. So the increase in cost is because they support with the tool. For example, we had EVA. EVA is another tool. The multi-beams, the processing part we did all these things using the EVA tool. The license of that EVA tool is 40 lakhs. And most importantly, I can tell you that most of the foreign vendors or OEMs, I call them as OEMs, they appreciate research. They appreciate institutes that are interested in doing this type of research, and that 40 lakhs license they gave free of cost to me. When I said that I'm working in this domain and I want to get into making use of that EVA, we just went with only one agreement, that too an online agreement. They asked me how many systems you want to install, means the license. I said that I want a maximum of 15 systems. Immediately they sanctioned for 15 systems. The total cost is 40 lakhs. So institutes have huge scope to do this type of research. So it depends. In case if I use a side scan sonar, then normal image processing tool, whether Python you want to do in Python, machine learning or all those things you can do. My scholars, around 5 to 6 scholars are working only in that. So we use side scan sonar. Apart from this, we have various sensors. We have our acoustic as well as optical cameras too for data collection. That is the reason I just want to make an information that please have a look over the lab and the facilities that what we have. So that will give you some idea about the tools what we use. You just get into each and every project where you can see the tools what we have used and some of the outcomes of it. Yeah, Aquasum is a good simulator, but the only thing is it should be good in Aquasum. Aquasum is a good simulator. If you want to do in networking, you can go for Aquasum. Terrestrial can be applied. Very good question. Sir, whether MATLAB code used for terrestrial can be applied. It means that you haven't understood my fundamental presentation. First, you have to, the basic problem or the main problem why people are not able to make use of MATLAB in this successfully is you have to create the underwater channel in MATLAB. That is the reason I just brought up with some of the equations and the concepts in this presentation. Okay. So you have to create. If you are good in creating that, very well you can do that. See, that is the reason why people prefer to go for Aquasym. Even some of my recent discussion with many of the vendors. See, they will come and they will tell that yes, we have this. If you ask them particularly to some particular problem, they may not be able to give or a supporting tool. See, even now I have fund to purchase a software, but I'm not able to find a right vendor for which will support the right requirement of me in underwater. So the only way is the equipment comes with its own software. Otherwise, you can see the feasibilities. In case, as I told you, in case if you want to work in networks, better look into Aquasym. In case if you want to work in signal processing, MATLAB, you want to work in image processing with all these things, MATLAB as well as Python, all these things will support you. Any other questions? That is not my job, sir. Attendance link will be sent by the coordinators.
Thank you, sir. Any
Yes.
other queries from the participants? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I would like to thank our resource person, Dr. S. Shaktivel Murugan, who honored the session with his fruitful thoughts. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation. The session was extremely informative. It helped us gaining wide knowledge in the domain of underwater communication. You have broadly covered all the concepts related with underwater communication. Surely our participants have taken many valuable things from this session and they can able to implement in their research work. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all. In case if anybody is interested to work with us, you are always welcome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, we'll wind up this session. Thanks a lot. Tomorrow we have the session starts by 10 a.m. Sharply, you try to join by 9:50 a.m. itself. Tomorrow's session is the title for tomorrow's session is Artificial Intelligence for Beginners, and the resource person for the session is Dr. M. Lakshmanan from Galgotias College of Engineering and Technology. Thanks a lot for your presence. The feedback link is shared in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback form for your attendance.